You just spent 45 minutes helping someone work through a breakdown. You said the right things. You asked the right questions. And when they finally said, "I feel so much better," you meant it. Then you sat alone in the quiet, and whatever you just did for them, you couldn't do any of it for yourself. This is the part nobody talks about. The person who holds everyone together is also, quietly, the person who can't hold themselves. You know the frameworks, you've read the books, or lived through enough hard things that you've figured out your own version. And yet, when you're the one falling apart, nothing you know seems to apply. It feels like a contradiction. How can you be so capable in one direction and so lost in the other? And the confusing part is that it's not about intelligence, it's not about emotional awareness. You have both. The issue is something more specific, a gap in where that capability has ever been aimed. This isn't just exhaustion, and it's not some poetic irony about helpers needing help. There's an actual mechanism here, a pattern that was built over time, probably without you noticing, and it runs so deep that even when you know it exists, it still keeps working. At some point, you learned that the most useful thing you could be was stable. Maybe it came from growing up in a house where someone had to be the calm one. Maybe it came from being the friend who always had it together. However it happened, you learned a rule. My job is to be okay. Other people are allowed to not be okay. And here's what that training does over time. It makes emotional support feel like something that flows outward. You become genuinely skilled at reading what someone else needs, sitting with their discomfort, holding space for their confusion. But turning those same skills inward? It's like using your dominant hand to do something you've only ever done with the other. The motion is technically the same, but it doesn't feel the same, and the result shows it. There's also this. When you help someone else, you get feedback. You can see them respond. Their situation is outside you, separate, observable, something you can actually affect. Your own inner state doesn't work that way. You can't watch it from a distance. And that loss of the observer's position removes the very tool you're most practiced with. If you've ever felt strangely more competent in someone else's crisis than your own, that's exactly why. You've probably noticed this too. You can give advice that is genuinely useful, even profound, and the moment you try to give it to yourself, it lands hollow. Not because it's wrong, but because the part of you that needs to hear it is the same part that's generating the noise. You can't be the speaker and the audience at the same time. Not without practice, you've never been given a reason to build. And the longer you've been the person who handles things, the harder it becomes to admit when you're not handling it. Not just to others, but to yourself. Because somewhere along the way, your struggles started to feel like they didn't count the same way. Like they needed to be bigger, more justified, before they were allowed to exist. So you raised the threshold, and kept raising it. If holding it together is who you are, if that's the role that earns you love, or respect, or a sense of safety, then falling apart isn't just uncomfortable. It feels like a threat to the self, and you can't apply care to something you're not willing to acknowledge is there. So the care keeps going outward, not because you have more to give, but because outward is the direction that feels permitted. Here's what makes this so difficult to see while it's happening. Emotional suppression and emotional strength look almost identical from the outside. And from the inside, they feel similar too. At first, you feel controlled, you feel steady, you think you're okay. What you're actually doing, in many cases, is just not yet counting your own weight. This is why the theory doesn't help you the way it helps the people you explain it to. You can know intellectually that you're allowed to fall apart, that your feelings are valid, that rest is not a reward you have to earn. But knowing it, and having the internal permission to actually feel it, those are two completely different things. And the second one doesn't come from reading. It comes from practice, directed inward, which is exactly what's been missing. Every time you show up for someone else, there's a cost that doesn't always register in the moment. Emotional labor is labor. It depletes something real. But because you've trained yourself to direct care outward, the replenishment, the inward turn, never gets practiced with the same consistency. The bucket empties, and you've never built the habit of filling it, because filling it never felt like the important part of the job. And this is the part worth sitting with. It's not that you lack the knowledge or the skill. It's that you've spent years practicing one direction and almost no time practicing the other. You didn't build the habit of turning that same quality of attention toward yourself, not because you didn't deserve it, but because no one taught you that you did. And the things we're never taught, we tend to treat as things we're not allowed. Underneath all of it, there's usually this. Your sense of value got tied to being useful, to being the one who shows up, who fixes things, who stays calm when everything else isn't. So needing help doesn't just feel uncomfortable. It feels like losing your justification for taking up space, like you only get to be there if you're contributing. And that's not a personality trait. That's a belief that was installed, which means it can be examined. So here's the first thing to practice. The next time you catch yourself giving someone advice, and you will because that's what you do, give yourself 2 seconds and ask yourself one question. Would I actually let someone say this to me? Not whether the advice applies, whether you'd receive it. That gap, when you find it, tells you exactly where your care is flowing and where it isn't. 2 seconds every time. That's all it takes to start seeing the asymmetry clearly. The second thing is simpler and more uncomfortable. Once a day, once, not 5 times, give yourself 5 minutes where the only rule is that you don't solve anything. No framework, no reframe, no here's what this means. Just let whatever is there be there. Set a timer, 5 minutes. Out loud or written, whichever feels less easy, because that's probably the one you actually need. This isn't therapy, it's building the muscle of inward attention that you've never trained. Over time, what you're trying to close is the asymmetry, not flip it. Not make yourself the priority at the expense of others. Just make inward as practiced as outward. Right now, you move toward other people's pain automatically, and you move away from your own just as automatically. Habit is built by repetition, not intention. The direction has to be practiced, not just decided. You'll know something is shifting when you notice your own response first, before you go to work for someone else, not instead of it. Just a 1-second check. Where am I right now? That pause is not selfishness. It's not weakness. It's the beginning of being someone who can sustain this, not just for a season, but for the long run. The people who sustain this kind of care over decades, who are still showing up, still present, still genuinely useful rather than running on empty, they didn't get there by giving more. They got there by including themselves in what they were offering. Not first, not exclusively, just included. That small shift in the equation changes everything about what's possible. You sat alone in the quiet after someone said, "I feel so much better," and you had nothing left to give the version of you that needed the same thing. That's not a character flaw. That's a trained gap, built over years in one direction, toward everyone else. The same care you've been giving out this whole time, it was always allowed to go inward. You just never aimed it there. If you've ever been the anchor for everyone around you while quietly sinking yourself, type the word anchor in the comments. It tells me you made it to the end of this one, and it tells me this video found the right person.